So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Journal Links podcast, and welcome back if you've been here before. To get everyone up to speed, this podcast is for journalists, bloggers, podcasters, or anyone similar to tell their own stories. My name is Connor O'Brien, and I am a journalist. I run Courageous Nerd, entertainment and pop culture platform, which features interviews with actors, writers, filmmakers. Joining me today is Eliza Parr. Eliza, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me, Connor. I'm very honoured to be here.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to chat today. And I suppose for anyone who's come across this who isn't familiar with you, I suppose we could give a brief snapshot into basically who you are and what you're all about.
Cool. So I am a reporter for a specialist magazine, a trade magazine called Pulse. So I'm primarily a news reporter, but I do other bits there as well. I'm NCTJ qualified. That is how we met. And I'm quite a recent newbie journalist. I only made the decision about a year ago to do my NCTJ, and then I got this job, which I felt very lucky to get straight off the course. And yeah, what else? I'm based in London. I have been since I graduated. And before I decided to be a journalist, I worked in the public sector for a few years.
Brilliant. Yeah. And obviously you mentioned, and like every other guest so far, we met on that same NCTJ diploma course. And I suppose that we're a few months removed from it, but how did you find that experience now having done the whole thing?
I feel like I've blacked out some of it, but it was really, really good for me in my career, and like I met really great friends, but it was intense. I would say that to anyone thinking of doing it, that it is intense. And obviously I'd had 9-to-5 jobs before, but it was a different type of 9-to-5. It was like same classroom every day, homework on top of that, and then I also had a part-time job on the side, so it was quite intense, but it definitely taught you how to be a journalist. Like, it does what it says on the tin. Like I had no idea how to write. I may have thought I was a good writer before, but I had never really written a news story before, and it's a very specific craft. So it was great for that, and it was really great at just throwing you in. And I think one of the best things to come out of it is kind of things like this, and meeting you and other people and having a network, because that's really invaluable, I think, if you want to be a journalist. And it's nice just to know people in the biz, I guess. So yeah, I was really glad I did it, but it was quite intense. I was very tired for those 4 months, very, very tired, but I'm glad I did it. What about you?
Yeah, no, same. And I think for me, it was kind of like suddenly, oh, hang on a second, there's a lot of pressure here. They kind of ease us in a bit gently at first. It's kind of like, oh, these like fun icebreakers, these like fun little things. And then one day it's like, hang on a second, like this is a lot of pressure. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure other people might have referenced it, but like the Queen died in our first week.
Yeah. Trust became PM in the same week.
Yeah. So not that we were like reporting on that, but it was just quite like an intense environment to like learn about news. But yeah, it was fun. And I think that intensity is kind of good to throw you in and force you to like, I kind of push you out your comfort zone, I think, because a lot of it is out of your comfort zone. Like, we did a few like role play things. So it would be like ringing up and someone on the other end would pretend to be like a mean police officer or something. And just stuff like that. It sounds silly, but I think it is good to kind of push you to get used to stuff like that, because if you want to be a journalist, you've got to do it.
Well, yeah, I don't know about you. The stuff that we did, as you say, is kind of like a fictional scenario that, at least for me anyway, I've now done in real life. And it's like, oh, and obviously there's much more pressure attached to the real thing than the fake one, because you can afford to mess the fake one up. But have you found yourself in that position? Like, have you done anything for real that we did in theory?
Yeah, I mean, I think I emailed my tutor like in my first week at Pulse, saying like I'm putting like everything into practice that we learn. I think she was really glad to hear that, that it doesn't all just go to nothing. And I guess other people go into like different branches of journalism, but because I'm doing quite straight news reporting and the style is quite similar to PA, Press Association, that we learn, I am doing like quite a lot of the stuff that we learn. Like, I write 2 news stories a day, and they're in a very similar style to, for example, what went in our portfolio or what we did in our essential journalism exams. So yeah, it's really helpful, like interviewing. I write my own headlines as well. They get edited, but like just little things like SEO that we did on the course, like I'm doing that for my pieces. So yeah, a lot of the stuff I do actually use. So, and I didn't really expect that. So yeah, maybe it is worth the money.
Yeah.
But do you use it I mean, local reporting is probably quite similar to the style we were doing on the course.
Yeah, in some ways, there's like small things where you know, I might kind of, my instinct would be what we were taught, and then they might say, actually, no, our specific way, and you know, style, that's the whole thing, is a whole different topic, and you know, it's specific to each place. So you know, obviously, as you mentioned, PA, you know, they've got their own thing. Where I'm at, that's its own thing. I'm sure Pulse has got its own thing. So there's not like one kind of roundabout, you know, universal way of doing things. It's all different depending on where you are. But yeah, I don't know about your experience.
Yeah, like Pulse definitely has its own style, and I think because maybe I didn't say in my little intro, but it's geared towards GPs. So our readership is GPs, and we write about health in the NHS. And because it's so specialist, obviously health is a massive topic, but it is quite specialist in the scheme of things. We do have a style, and we don't assume any knowledge because a reader might be coming totally fresh to it. But there are certain things that our readers will know, and there's also like, you have to give background to every piece, and I'll have that background because I've worked on the story. So it's because we're quite niche, it gives us like, it's somewhat of a distinct style. But in terms of being like straight news reporting, is quite similar to what we were doing on the course. You know, interviewing people, like verbatim quotes, and like your top line, and like how the story progresses. That's all quite similar to what we learned. So yeah, I think the course was definitely useful, and obviously you build on that in your career, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, I know a little bit about what you were doing beforehand. You touched on it briefly just there. I know a tiny bit, but I was wondering, do you maybe like discuss that a bit, and like what led you from what you were doing to the course we did?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was at uni, I definitely was considering journalism, and I did quite a bit of work experience. But when I got to my 3rd year, I was thinking, how do you get a job, and how do you get paid to do this? And I knew I wanted to move to London. So I just kind of put it to one side and thought I'll go for something a bit more steady. And the public sector really appealed to me, corporate stuff less so. So I was like, public sector seems good. It's kind of, you know, researching, engaging with people. Policy, I was really interested in policy. So I applied for quite a few things, and I landed on the NHS grad scheme, which is very different to being a journalist, but it's a great scheme if anyone's interested in the NHS, and it basically teaches you how to be a leader. So like how to be, eventually, like your end goal might be being like a chief executive of a hospital trust. And I kind of realized when I was doing the 2 years that wasn't my end goal, and I really didn't want to do that. But it was like a crash course in the NHS basically, and it was during the pandemic. So I learned so much, and I'm really glad I did it. And I'm kind of glad I've come this roundabout way to journalism, because I picked up so many skills, and obviously like working in the NHS helped me get my job in health journalism now. So yeah, I did that for 2 years, and I was just thrown into a hospital doing like management. I managed a team, obviously was there during COVID. It was quite stressful at times. It was definitely out of my comfort zone. Like joining as a 21-year-old, I felt like a baby who didn't know how to do anything. I felt so awkward all the time. And I kind of grew a lot from that, I guess. And then after that, I went to work in the Department of Health, so in Whitehall, which was, again, public sector, but quite different to managerial stuff. Far more like strategy, policy, a lot of like presenting information, consolidating lots of dense information to different stakeholders, and writing submissions to ministers to help them make decisions. So it's a really interesting job, but I kind of discovered through the course of that, I think throughout my 3 years, I was always kind of like, I think I want to do journalism, but I have no idea how to get there. And finally, in that last job, I was like, right, I really want to do this. What steps, like practical steps, can I take? So the first thing I did was started talking to people, the very few people that I knew in journalism, and they were from my work experience stints when I was at university. So it's really helpful that I did those. And I reconnected with someone, and she's been great. Like, she's been so helpful to me, not just then, but throughout my kind of the past year. And she kind of advised me about this course, and I'd never even heard of NCTJ before. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a pretty practical step you can take. Obviously, is a big change. I had to like quit my job, but I mulled over it for like 2 months maybe, and I think I made the decision like 3 months before the course started, and I thought that was still quite late to be making that decision. But I think I got like the early bird discount or something, because I was one of like the first people to sign up. So if you're thinking about these things, think
ahead.
Early, you might get the discount. But yeah, so I made the decision about like June last year, and it was a lot of back and forth. I was probably really annoying for all my friends and family. I made a very extensive pros and cons list, because I guess I was leaving quite a steady job where I could see like my trajectory, but I could also see that maybe in like 5 years' time I wouldn't be very happy. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And I kind of was pretty sure something would work out, but there's obviously quite a big risk that it won't. But I thought, it's 4 months. I'll come out with a qualification, and hopefully I'll be able to find something afterwards. So I did it, and it's worked out super well. Like, I knew that the public sector, even though I was super interested in like the subjects and the things we were talking about, I didn't actually like the day-to-day work of it. So now hopefully I'll do journalism that is still around the same subjects, policy and stuff like that. But I get to like write about it and think about it and analyze it from like a impartial position. So yeah, I think that was the key like change that I wanted to make. And it's really hard. Like, I feel like I've been really lucky. And a year ago, I was so confused about how you got a job. It was impossible. And especially like everything being in London, and rent here is so crazy. So it's not easy, but yeah, I'm really glad that I kind of had an existential crisis a year and a half ago, because it's led me to here. But yeah, I think that answer, I can't remember what you asked now. But
I think we got there. I think somewhere in there. But yeah, no, it's funny because like almost everyone seems to have like, I mean, at least other people I spoke to, no one was saying, "Oh, I wanted to be a journalist when I was like a little kid," and they just, it was like their lifelong. Like everyone kind of stumbled into it so far, and like in a weird way. But I kind of relate to what you were saying, because I did work experience, but I was younger. I was still in school. I was like 16, kind of in a similar place to where I'm at now, professionally. But yeah, I kind of put it to one side for a few years. Then I decided to make a website, and that did really well for me. And I quite enjoy this. And I was doing a film degree. I was enjoying that, but it's like, well, hang on a second, I'm really enjoying this thing as well. And I think maybe that's what I want to pursue more than, I think I could be good at this rather than a subpar film person. So yeah, I'll go with the thing that I seem to be good at, and yeah, we'll take it from there. And
well, you never know. In future, film could be like, I feel like careers can be very winding, and we're going to be working until we're like 70. So don't rule it out. But yeah, I think work experience is like, did you think when you did the work experience when you were like 16, did you think this is something that I'd want to do, or was it quite neutral?
Well, it was on the vague notion that I liked writing. I was good at English in school. I kind of, well, journalism, that's somewhat relevant. And I don't remember like being, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't like thinking in that way at the time. I remember like there was like an older journalist kind of giving me tips about, you always need like a notebook and like things like that. And I was thinking, well, yeah, that's great. I mean, I won't need to know any of this, but I'll listen to what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, turns out I should have paid, I guess, more attention at the time, because, yeah.
I think you've done all right.
Brilliant. Yeah. You're kind of talking about as well, kind of, coming onto the course, but what was about PA in particular? Like, was that the exact course that someone recommended, or was there like other factors that went into picking that particular course?
Yeah. So as I said, I was recommended by a kind of like mentor journalist, and she knew someone who'd done this course, and she knew it was quite highly rated. I also heard about like the City Masters, because I know they're quite prestigious, but I didn't want to do a Masters. I couldn't really afford to do a whole year out. So I wanted to do something condensed. So that kind of narrowed it down. And I felt like when I spoke to other people, NCTJ seemed to be something that was well respected. I don't think it's like completely essential to be a journalist, but I think it's a great like way to show that you
starting
are
off point. Yeah.
So once I decided I wanted to do that, and I didn't want to do a master's, it kind of left it in London, where I wanted to stay. This is where I live. It left me with two options, and the other one was, it's as simple as the fact that it was in Twickenham, which is on the other side of London to me. So the other one is the News Associates, and I just was like, okay, I don't want to travel an hour every day.
Yeah.
So it wasn't there wasn't much criteria really, but I just went with PA because it was close to me, and I've heard of the Press Association. And it worked out well. I feel like we had a great cohort, and it was quite nice to do it in September. It felt like going back to school vibes. Obviously, then it made it kind of depressing. January is like the worst month of the year, and we didn't have jobs. That was a bad time. But a condensed course is quite good because it just forces you to like get on with it. The only thing I would say is that you can do a part-time version of it. You can like keep a job alongside, because I think with the full-time one, I did like a couple of nights in a pub, but even that was quite hard. So I think if you need a part-time job or a full-time job to maintain it, definitely I think the part-time course is a good way to go, because it is intense. It's 9 to 5 plus like all the homework and shorthand on top of that. So yeah, that's why I chose it, just because it's close by.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, and similar. I mean, I'm out of London, but in terms of to where we were compared to Twickenham, it's the same thing. Twickenham is like incredibly far. This was doable on a train, so brilliant.
You were always there like early, and I'd be like still in bed probably by the time you got there.
Well, it was always me and Amrit, who works for Sky. Who people, he might be on later. Who knows? You might get to meet him. Anyone who's watching, listening.
Oh, nice.
Maybe. Who knows? But it was normally him and then me, and then we were just sitting around waiting for the rest of you guys to turn up. It's like, So I got to know him really well, because we're just sitting there chatting for ages, and then the rest of you came in. But
the early birds.
Oh, for sure. And you mentioned obviously we started in September, and what do you remember about that first day, and obviously meeting myself and the other people, like that first impressions, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I think I wasn't like super nervous, because I felt like I don't know, I just felt like it would be quite a cushioned environment, because it's like this course, they'll probably do, as you said, like do some icebreakers. So I wasn't super nervous. I think I'd been away the weekend like just prior, so I was like really tired, and I hadn't had enough time to get nervous. So I was just like, right, I'll just rock up. I can't really remember who I spoke to outside. Like I remember we all like congregated, and then we went in, and then it was funny because I feel like where, including yourself, like where some people planted there on that first day, they like stayed there the whole time.
Yeah.
I was walking in, and I was like, is it really consequential where I sit? I can't actually remember who I sat next to, but yeah, I really enjoyed the first day, and I felt like I was quite not nervous, but one thing I was worried about is like, I'm not like even old or anything, I'm 25, but I was worried that everyone would be straight out of university, and so be a bit more like fresh-faced and optimistic. So it was really nice to have like diversity, and even like there were people who were 18 and 19, which is crazy to me. Like, including like Amrit, like children, some of the most people in the class. But it's really nice to have that diversity, and also like people on apprenticeships as well, which I think really brings an interesting angle to the classroom, because people are actually like, albeit just one day a week at that stage, they're actually going into newsrooms, and they have stuff to bring back and teach us. So I was really like happy to like meet people with different backgrounds and had done different jobs before, or were younger, or were doing an apprenticeship. So yeah, I think it was a really good mix of people.
Yeah.
I can't remember meeting you for the first time, Connor, but I do remember you sitting in that spot with Will.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, because I actually, and maybe this is kind of bad, I remember meeting you because, because I've got like a really specific memory, like just a weird memory, but also B, it was like I've told the story to other people. It's just a bit weird. I don't mean that in a bad way, but
go ahead.
We had done like something where we had to say facts about ourselves, like in front of everybody else.
Oh,
or
yeah.
Or we could tell someone else our facts, and they had to go. But that was a bit weird. But this is like so and so who I just met. Here's we need to know about them. But no, one of my facts was that I'd done a DNA test, and I'm like 3/4 Irish, which I mean, O'Brien. That's not really too shocking, is it? But but when I first met you on that first day, you asked me whether I had an Irish passport or not on that basis, and then you proceeded to encourage me to get one because obviously the whole situation with the EU, and I'm like, what a way to meet. That's the first thing you ever say to me. You should get an Irish passport.
I stand by that. Yeah. Do you have one? Do you have one?
No.
Oh, kind of.
I didn't listen.
You should get one. You should totally get one.
Yeah.
You don't want to
full circle. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. See, I didn't even, I just say things and don't remember them. But yeah, I do remember that game actually, and I think I like read out Ruben's, and I remember he like said something about like, where's the most rogue place you'd been, and he said like Malia or something, and we were all like, is that rogue? I don't know. But yeah, I think I remember doing that. That was quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember what your facts were that someone read out about? I guess would have been Ruben who would have read out about you.
I don't know, actually. My fact that I always pull out whenever there's an icebreaker and you have to have like an interesting fact is that I have a dimple on my face that my brother gave me because he performed a WWE wrestling move on me when I was like 8. And I'm probably not going to be able to share it, but when I blink, it like comes out on one side of my face. Oh. So that is like the fact I bring out every time because I hate icebreakers. But I'm like, that one, it just puts everything to bed. No one can, dispute it. It's on my face. So I maybe said something along those lines, but I can't remember.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said the Irish thing, obviously, and then I mentioned the website. That's obviously like a big one. Yeah. And those are kind of like a big deal for me because for whatever reason, it wasn't always something I was forthcoming that I did. It was like, I mean, obviously, it's my face. You can go watch it as videos. It's clearly me doing it, but like I didn't go around saying, oh, look, I do this thing. Like, I wasn't talking about it a lot, but obviously considering where we were and the environment we were in and what we were doing, it seemed like perfect sense to mention it, and did it on the first day. And there you go.
No, I mean, it's amazing what like you had done before the course. Like, I think I hadn't done loads of it, and it's something that I would like always encourage people to do is like just put yourself out there and do something you enjoy and put it out for like the world to read, which I think is like quite an uncomfortable thing to do. But like whether it's a blog or a podcast or whatever, I think it just shows to any potential employer that you are actually interested in that. It's not just something that you'll do to get paid. Obviously, you should get paid if you're doing work experience. If you have a hobby in your spare time like that, I think it is like a really, really good way of showing how interested you are. And like, obviously you're super accomplished. But the thing you said about not wanting to talk about it, I think it's like a funny thing about journalists is that probably a lot of people get into it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people get into it because they like the sound of their own voice, but I think a lot of journalists get into it because they like listening to people, they like telling other people's stories and like analyzing things. But then the nature of like journalism now is that you have to like constantly like self-promote your work, whether it's like Twitter or like so many digital platforms now. Like if you didn't like being in front of a camera, you might now have to be in front of a camera. And I think it's quite funny because it's like kind of a cohort of people that might be probably not introverted, but like slightly more like of a listener and the one asking the questions. I think like I'm really uncomfortable with like Twitter and stuff, but I've just sucked it up and I've got an account.
Brilliant. Yeah. And you mentioned as well, you had like a part-time job while we were doing the course. And I mean, I did as well. I had a little job going on. And I think that was a fairly small group of us who did. But like, I suppose, like, how did you find the balance of that? Like, did it like, did it ever intersect? Did you want to do something to the course, like, homework or something? Did it ever affect that?
Yeah, it was quite difficult. I think at the end of it, so I just did 2 shifts straight after the course, starting at like 6 p.m. and it was at a pub just down the road. So
Yeah.
it was funny. In my first week, I was like learning how to pull a pint and also serving all these people that I'd just met on the course, and trying not to embarrass myself. But yeah, I did two nights a week, and then I went down to one night around December time because I was just getting a little bit overwhelmed. Because I think when you finish the course at 6 p.m., and as I said, I've had a 9 to 5 job before, but there's something about being in that classroom that was so intense and tiring. And the last thing I wanted to do was go and pull pints for like city bankers.
Right.
But it was, that was kind of like part of, like, when I went on the course, I knew I'd have to do that. And I also did, which really helped and meant that I didn't have to work in the pub so much. I did my placement on a Friday with the Financial Times, and they really, I was really lucky to be paid. Obviously, as I said, if you're doing work experience, you should be paid, but a lot of places don't. So I was really pleasantly surprised about that, and that meant that I didn't have to that meant I could go down to like one night a week with the pub. But it was quite hard. Yeah, I kind of, if my shift started at 6 or 6:30, I'd stay after class and like do my shorthand, and then I'd go there and I'd eat my depressing like microwave lunch, like dinner cold, and I'd sit in the cellar and like do some homework at the pub. So it wasn't amazing, but like I'm not complaining too much because it was like I knew getting into it that that's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And it was quite like, I don't know, like looking back, I did 4 months of working really hard, and it felt like I like achieved something. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like, I'd say it is possible to do a part-time job, but just find one that works for you. The thing that worked for me was the fact that the pub was next door to the
Yeah.
centre.
Yeah.
If it had been anywhere else, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And it also meant that it kept my weekends free, which I really wanted to ensure that I did that. So yeah, I kind of worked it around my schedule, and it worked, but it was tiring. I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. No,
What about you? What job were you doing, Connor? I didn't.
yeah. So without kind of going too much into the name of the company or anything, let's just say a very popular clothing retailer, put it that
Okay.
way.
Okay.
And I was on the tills,
Oh yeah.
Saturdays, Sundays. It weren't like long shifts, but it was like the middle of the day. So I'd like do like course stuff in the morning, go and do this like thing for a couple of hours in the middle, and then go back and at the end of the day go back to what I was doing in the morning. So it's a little bit disconcerting. It wasn't like exhausting, just a little bit kind of in and out. And
that is tough though, because like as you said, you were traveling in a long way every day for the course, so you had long days, and then your weekends not being free. That is, you worked hard. You deserve your certificate.
well, yeah, I suppose like that's kind of a cool thing because I think a lot of us did manage to get the certificate, but a smaller
Yeah.
group actually managed to get a job out of it. I mean, obviously you and I are both in that group that managed
Yeah.
it, so go
Yeah.
us. But but yeah, I mean, like, do you feel like obviously I mentioned this already, but like, do you feel like you got out the course what you thought you would going in? Did anything take you by surprise?
Yeah, there were parts of it that I like definitely, I don't know. There were things that I could feed back about it, like it wasn't perfect. And I think one thing I didn't like so much was kind of being treated like I was a school kid again. I get that the classroom environment is like important to get us on track and make sure we learn everything, but I felt like I really regressed back to being like 16.
Yeah.
And I kind of would have appreciated being treated a little bit more like an adult, but I think it's just the nature of that like high pressure environment. But in terms of like the material things I got out of it, like I got the certificate, and not just that, like I really did learn how to write news and to research, and to like, it made me think like a journalist. And I think before I hadn't really, like, I'd done work experience, but I really had no idea what it means to be a journalist. So yeah, it did really teach you how to do that, and you were taught by people who were
Yeah.
Previously journalist, so that was really good, and I really enjoyed doing my placement on the Friday. So yeah, I definitely think I got value for money, and I got what I wanted out of it, and really what I wanted was a job, and it led quite perfectly onto my job. And
Yeah.
I was quite lucky because my editor now, Jamie, the editor of Pulse, he has a connection to the NCCJ, knows one of our tutors. So he came in and spoke to us, and you might remember he came and spoke about Pulse. And previously I'd never considered trade magazines. I'd never really I don't consume any trade magazines because I didn't really have a profession or anything. Obviously I knew of some health ones, but I never really used them or anything. I never thought about doing it as a career. And I always kind of thought, I'll go and I want to work in a national newsroom or whatever. And meeting him there and him talking about, obviously he was, selling it. He wanted people to apply for the job, but it really made me think about that as a potential career. And out of that, I've got a job because I applied, and then a few months later got it. So just that one talk, which I never would have applied for a job like that if I hadn't been on the course and met him. So yeah, that was a really good thing that came out of it. And yeah, I'm not going to be framing my certificate probably and singing about it forever, but it was a really good way to get a job, and it's a good thing to have on your CV. So and the people were great. I was really happy to meet a really great cohort of people. So that was one of the best things as well.
Yeah.
What do you think it was worth it?
I think so, yeah. But I just remembered, and it's completely random, but I was talking to somebody on my job about a story, and they happened to say to me, "Oh, my niece is thinking about journalism. Was the NCTJ worth it?" And I think it might have been a thing she had done a degree, it wasn't a journalism degree, and this woman, her aunt, was saying, well, if there's this qualification, you should probably go and try and get that. So I mean, I don't know how much of what I said was taken to heart. I said, look, I mean, I thought it was worthwhile. It worked out for me. I mean, hopefully for her as well. But
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not on you if it doesn't work out. But yeah, I would recommend people to do it probably if they want to be. Even if you don't really want to be a reporter, I think it's still a really good thing to do, and I think it is well respected by employers still.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would recommend it.
Yeah, there's even things maybe we wouldn't have thought of that you pick up that are just really invaluable, and there's even things. I mean, for me anyway, I find that come up. I mean, well, obviously it's kind of basic stuff, but even certain from law or public affairs, the phraseology of it, and and knowing what certain things mean, is really helpful. I get that's a fundamental, I guess. But I mean, how about you?
Yeah. I one thing I quite practical that I have done in my job is done a freedom of information request, an FOI.
Yeah.
And I remember we did a few sessions on those.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I probably wouldn't be doing them anytime soon, but we actually do quite a few at Pulse because we work with data quite a lot. So I did a really tricky one for this investigation that I did. And yeah, it was really good to have spoken about it on the course and some of the pitfalls of it and what to watch out for. So yeah, that was quite a material thing that I put into practice. But yeah, just a way of I guess their focus on complete accuracy all the time. It really makes me second guess my copy and make sure I'm rereading it and don't say anything that's not backed up. And having that drilled into you from the start, I think is really, really useful. So yeah, I'm glad I did it, basically.
For sure. Yeah. I suppose it's just as much for me as anyone might be watching or listening, but I'm really curious about what your day-to-day entails, just because, you're in a slightly different sector, I think, to a lot of other people. So I mean, is your day roughly the same each day, or could it be completely different? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So a very standard day for me is in the morning, I'll do a news search. So I'll go on the Department of Health's website. I'll use Twitter a lot. I'll go on my trusted sources for information and look for any new postings or new reports or anything interesting like that. And I'll collate together a little list, or I'll send it on as I find it. But then we have like a news meeting in the morning and we discuss what we're going to write that day. And we have 2 newsletters that go out in the morning and in the evening at like 12 p.m. and like 6 p.m. And that really like structures our day, because we have to have stories for the morning and stories for the evening, and we have to have a lead story, which is like a more interesting one, a more well-researched one. So yeah, that adds a lot of structure and also sometimes a bit of pressure. So I'm usually writing. So after that news meeting, I'll then start writing, like interviewing people. And we always try and get for a lead story, we'll always try and get a comment from a GP. So we've got like a trusted network of GPs that will ring up for comments about stuff, but it's always good to try and like develop your contact base as well, which is something that's one of the things I found the hardest actually about this job, is like I didn't really know that many GPs before I started, so I'm having to really like my networks and stuff. So yeah, and then I'll write up, and one good thing about the job as well is like you upload everything yourself in the content management system, and you do SEO and you choose a picture, and it gets you quite skilled on the digital stuff. And then my editor goes in, and then it goes up and it'll go in our newsletter probably. So that's a standard like news reporting day. And I usually average like 2 stories a day, sometimes just 1, and sometimes more if it's busy. And we'll also do like breaking news stuff if like something dramatic happens in the GP world. But then also my team's really great in that we're given like other responsibilities as well. So we have a print magazine that goes to GP practices across the country, and that has a cover feature every month. So we usually try and do like a big investigation, a big piece of analysis every month, and sometimes we might commission it out. But I also got the chance to do one like in-house, and kind of balance that with my news reporting, and that was so fun because I think investigations is something I'm like really interested in long term, and I just don't think I probably would have got that opportunity if I worked in a really busy national newsroom. So it's really nice to have that flexibility. So I sometimes work on investigations if like a big report comes out, like last week the big NHS workforce report came out, we'll do like bits of analysis on that, so I'll write in a slightly different style to news reporting. But yeah, it's great. Like I think one thing that I really love about this job is in my other jobs working in the public sector, obviously you're very bureaucratic, there's a lot of admin. There's like hardly any admin in this job because you are a reporter, you write your story, you upload it. Obviously there's some admin, but it's just great. Like you like write, you research, you talk to people, and then that's like the extent of your job. And you can always be doing more, but I don't have to do like kind of, slightly boring admin stuff, which I really value. But yeah, that's kind of roughly my day to day. Does that like line up? Do you do like a morning meeting and pitch?
A little bit, yeah. It's a little bit different for me in that, I mean, on paper, I technically work for like several different newspapers because it's a collective. I think some years ago they just gathered up a bunch of like smaller, almost like village newspapers, and it's all under one umbrella. So so I almost have to be careful if I'm on the phone to somebody. I have to make sure I say the right one, because if I'm like, oh, hi, I'm from this newspaper, and they're like, wait a second, I
don't live there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, there's only, to be fair, there's only like maybe like 5 or 6, and within reason, once you kind of know where everything is, you can say the right one. But that's not something I thought I'd have to worry about. Identifying myself correctly of where I work. No. I mean, yeah, it's otherwise, yeah, pretty similar. Kind of, you meet. Sometimes that story's been gathered and they kind of get divvied out. I've had ones where I've been online and like seen people say things, and I brought it up and said, oh, this could be good, and they've used them. So yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah. I think it's quite nice because I'm in a small team that it's like not scary to pitch stuff, but bringing ideas is always a little bit like nerve-wracking. But it's like a news meeting is like a fun environment. It's kind of like what you imagine when you're thinking about being a journalist, like sitting around and talking about stories. So that is a fun aspect that I think most newsrooms do actually do.
Yeah, and even just kind of hearing, I don't know if it's the same for your one, but hearing what everyone else is up to as well is really interesting. Kind of that sparks conversations of, I didn't know you were doing something about that. It's, kind of have a talk about it. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. This is actually the last question I've got prepared, so we'll see if this is where it ends or not. But you mentioned obviously, so I think this time a year ago you would have known that you'd be doing the course like later on, right?
Yeah, I'd signed up by this point last year.
Yeah. So honestly, same for me. I know a few of the others were a bit later, but I suppose so. If you think about this time last year and that Eliza, who hadn't done the course yet, what advice would you give her?
Oh God, I'm always terrible at this. I don't know. I feel like, to give myself some credit, I feel like I really had amped myself up for what it would be like.
Okay.
In a way, I think I'd almost made it like worse in my head that it was going to be this like hellish 4 months. I think what I'd say to that past Eliza is like, enjoy it a little bit more, and also like, don't stress out too much about the homework. Like, you will get it all done. And I feel like there was a balance that I could have struck where I didn't like I wasn't exhausted all the time, but I still got the work done. So I feel like I'd tell her to like chill out a little bit. But yeah, enjoy it, like enjoy meeting new people and like making connections, because that's one like really lasting thing that will come out of it. And yeah, look at jobs early, because that was stressful getting to like Christmas was not an enjoyable Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
We had so much to think about. So yeah, I would have maybe started looking at jobs a little bit earlier, but even there, like, there's not much more I could have done, and it's all worked out okay. But yeah, I would just say maybe enjoy it a bit more and relax. Like, don't stress out too much, because you will get your portfolio done, you will pass your exams, and it'll be fine.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, I mean, thanks again, Eliza, for taking the time to chat today, and I wish you, continued success with what you're doing. All the best, and take care.
Thanks, Connor. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Journo Links podcast, be sure to keep up with the pod on social media. On both Twitter and Instagram, it's at Journo Links Pod. Additionally, if you want to keep up with Courageous Nerd content, on Instagram it's at Courageous Nerd and Twitter at _Courageous Nerd. Thank you, and see you in the next one.